long-standing relationship as a unique connection between the world's oldest and largest democracies, with a special obligation now to demonstrate that our governments can deliver for.
The most important priority is essentially it is oriented towards the development of the people.
Defense remains an area of mutual cooperation. We as Honeywell has interest in that, so we'll certainly support what both governments want to propose forward.
It's a matter of pride for all of us simply because both countries can learn a lot from each other. In fact, America can learn so much from India.
Main तो आज हम इसके लिए आए हुए हैं, मोदी को सपोर्ट के लिए।
यहाँ भी 3 दिन रुकने वाले हैं और मोदी के लिए बहुत सपोर्ट करने वाले हैं।
Pictures there of the anticipation ahead of the Prime Minister's US state visit. Hello and welcome to News Centre. I'm Ashmit Kumar. Now, as Prime Minister Modi's state visit is about to begin, there is great anticipation on what are the takeaways for India. The focus is clearly on defence and technology, and it is here that the India Cellular and Electronics Association wrote to the MeitY Secretary Alkesh Kumar Sharma to seize the moment. The letter cites how the US tariffs on Chinese imports has created a golden opportunity. The letter claims that the US is an electronics importer to the tune of over $550 billion. But while China's share may be dropping, India's share is at about $4.5 billion, or a little over 0.5%. This, while the likes of Vietnam and Mexico are stealing a march. To discuss this further, I have with me the chairman of ICEA, Pankaj Mohindroo, as well as India's former ambassador to the WTO, Jayant Dasgupta. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. Mr. Mohindroo, to you first. This is a big visit here. There's a lot of excitement, a lot of energy. Tell us, in terms of deliverables, in terms of takeaways, what does this US electronics import bill mean for us in terms of where we currently stand and what the size of the opportunity, what the size of the pie essentially is in the US?
Thank you for having me. It's enormous. We were just there in May for the ICT dialogue, and the warmth and the increasing friendship is incredible. That's all I can say about this. Now, the US is the largest importer of finished products, electronic finished products, over $500 billion. We have seen very strong growth in the last 3-4 years, especially in the last 2 years, about 350%. Our share is very tiny. It's not 0.5%, Ashmit, as you said, it's about nearly 1%. What has shifted from China has largely gone to Vietnam, Mexico, and Taiwan. They have taken the major share of the growth and the reduction in Chinese imports to the US. But the future is extremely bright. We have currently extremely strong endorsement from Apple and its ecosystem, which is kicking in at this moment. That's the most valuable company in the world. And I think that is encouraging other American companies to set their sights on India. So I'm very optimistic about the future.
Interesting. In fact, just speaking of Apple, for the month of May itself, the run rate that they've managed to hit is 10,000 crore rupees in terms of output. And that was just for the month of May, speaking of Apple. But let's take this conversation forward. Mr. Dasgupta, thank you once again for joining us. The question to you is, in 2018 is when a 25% duty was levied on various Chinese imports by the US. Now, more recently, we've seen Anthony Blinken visit Beijing. There are words coming in from Xi Jinping saying that perhaps there is a need for a stable US-China relationship. But there is still that caution with respect to economic positions being guarded. There is still that tension between the two sides. What opportunity does this give India, especially at a time when the Indian Prime Minister is visiting the US?
The first thing I would like to mention in this context is the initiative on critical and emerging technologies, the ICET. Now, this is something which was signed in May 2022, and it heralds a very deep relationship that India and the US want to have in 6 focus areas. One of them, of course, is about the supply chain for semiconductors, defense industrial cooperation, space, telecom, innovative ecosystem, etc. Now, US administration or their congressmen would ask their industry to, hedge their bets and to take it as regards investments into India.
Sure.
They would ask them to take their own estimation. But now there is a change, and this change is that the US administration, the US Congress men in their private capacity, they are all exhorting US industry to invest in India. And this includes semiconductors, the electronics industry, and other high-tech industries. So this is a very good harbinger for attracting investments into India in electronics. As far as electronics is concerned, if you look at the figures for last year, we have done about $25.3 billion worth of exports, and it has grown by 49%. Of course, it has been pushed mainly by, or not mainly, but significantly by our burgeoning mobile phone exports, which have reached about $11.5 billion last year. So the time has now come for us to take a leap. And this can
So
only
big
take
opportunity
place.
this.
Yes.
Right, Mr. Dasgupta. So a big, important opportunity here. And in fact, speaking of hedging bets, Mr. Mohindroo, let me come to you. We've been hearing for a while now about the China plus one strategy. We have multiple countries competing to be that plus one. India, no different. India is trying to play the role of the next big manufacturing destination. But is it a fair assessment that countries such as Mexico and Vietnam have perhaps taken a leap ahead in terms of providing that manufacturing base, because the numbers seem to suggest that the plus one strategy seems to be flowing more towards these destinations rather than India?
Yes, I think the elephant moves a bit slowly. And one thing, Ashmit, I'd like to clear that the 25% duties do not include some very important products like laptops, tablets, smartphones, chargers, lithium-ion batteries, etc. So they have been kept out to keep the interest of the American companies and the American consumers. So, as I said, we have to get our act together. Besides Apple, we have to see that all the other important companies and the product categories, which is laptops, desktops, tablets, telecom equipment, LED lighting, consumer electronics, industrial electronics, all of them, we have to ensure that we have our act together. Our strategies are getting sharpened. Our policies are rolling out. We've just had the IT hardware PLI 2.0 coming in. We are looking at very seriously at a hearable and wearables PLI also, and then consumer electronics. The industrial electronics sector is just getting calibrated, and strategies are being formed around that, and also LED. So the base, the foundation, which is the production base here, and the ability of companies, both Indian companies and GVCs, lead firms, and then GVCs to establish in India and take off, is going to take us a little time, but it is a very sure-footed effort. I'm very confident that within the next 3 to 5 years, you will see that this figure of 4.5 billion will cross $100 billion. That is the export to US we are targeting. And this may not happen by 26, but definitely by 27 or 28, we should be crossing $100 billion of electronics export to the US. And the cooperation from the other side, as Jen said, the ICEA, the cooperation from the other side, MITI and NSF just signed a MOU last month, which will be announced very soon. that is a great opportunity for the two countries to do technology R&D, especially in electronics and the digital space. And you'll see a lot more happening in that area. So I think India will also contribute majorly to the development of the US economy, further development of the US economy.
Sure. Right. Let me take that across to Mr. Dasgupta. Mr. Dasgupta, what Mr. Mohindroo is saying that there needs to be a lot more work that needs to be put in for the Apple effect to rub off on some of the other companies. Let's talk about it in context of the Prime Minister's visit. Now, Prime Minister will be meeting multiple top CEOs. He's also reportedly meeting Elon Musk. But in terms of attracting more players from the US, more American companies above and beyond Apple, how do we make it happen? Is it a question of merely dialogue and communication, or is it a question of dialogue and communication coupled with reforms and restructuring back home here in India?
Well, the issue about reforms and restructuring is extremely important because a businessman or a business entity is not going to invest in India just because the government of the US and the government of India are strategic partners and have a very, very good relationship. It's all going to come down to the ease of doing business, the business environment, the opportunities of growth, and third country exports from out of India. And what does India have to offer, which other competing countries like, let's say, Mexico and Vietnam and Taiwan are not in a position to offer. So that is the kind of judgment which we have to exercise. And mind you, the US, of course, is has the cutting edge technology in semiconductor development. But if you look at a whole host of electronic products, it's basically in China, in Taiwan, to a great extent in South Korea, a little bit in Japan also.
Sure.
These are the countries which have a lot of technical expertise and knowledge, and they are manufacturing not only in China, but all over Northeast Asia and East Asia. So this is, if we want to make a dent in that, if we want to attract investments, we have to be more attractive than the things on offer in these countries. So that is what will be an acid test for us.
Right. Sure. We're running out of time, Mr. Mohindroo. Let me come to you for a final word here. You mentioned you've given yourself, the industry, the target of reaching $100 billion in terms of US imports by 2028. The question I want to ask you is the current gap that we have with respect to the jurisdictions that we're competing with, the likes of Mexico, Vietnam. How do we bridge that gap? Is it a question of more PLIs, more incentives on offer, or is it more structural issues such as perhaps correction of duties?
I think Jayant put it very beautifully, the parameters he mentioned, but I think you've added a few. I think I'll in addition to tariffs, I will correction of tariffs and having a very clean and a predictable environment. I think the most important thing, which Jayant also mentioned, is the ease of doing business. I think we are moving towards a nation which is going to be the best place of doing business. And with the demographic dividend we have and the enormous workforce we have, I think India is going to be an unbeatable destination. But these are work in progress situation. At the moment, we have public statements from many of the US companies which are they're expressing concerns about, for example, the mover scheme which we pushed so hard, and now there is uncertainty about the mover scheme. This is certainly not increasing the enthusiasm. So I think there's, as I said, a lot of homework. We have to put our heads down, become the most competitive and the best place to do business. And with what we offer, I think the sky is the limit for us. I think $100 billion is just a beginning. Right. I'm very serious about it. Yeah.
We'll end the discussion on that note that the $100 billion mark is just the beginning. Mr. Mohindroo, Mr. Dasgupta, thank you so much for joining us. It was an interesting take on what perhaps can be the big takeaways from Prime Minister's US visit, state visit. But that's unfortunately all the time that we have. We need to slip into a very short break. But coming up, what will Prime Minister's visit to the United States mean for cybersecurity in India? I speak to Sean Duca of Palo Alto Networks right after this very short break. Stay tuned.